Throughout my first semester at St. Joseph's University, I have been exposed to all sorts of outlooks in communication practice and theory. In the various readings we have discussed, some authors seem to have different views than others, but there is one central theme among them. This world is one that is ever changing, now more rapidly than ever. Luckily, we can use patterns collected from past data to help us predict what the future holds. Over the course of the semester, there have been some readings that have provoked thought and led me to question where exactly our society is headed. Others have been real head scratchers, leaving me unable to see eye to eye with the author or creator of a certain writing or video. Clearly, taking in all this information has helped me to form my own opinion about what parts of technology are helpful or useful and what parts aren't so necessary. In 2008, Michael West released an anthropological introduction to YouTube, which highlighted what was basically the history of YouTube as of 2008. There's plenty of material within that video, and making an attempt at a quick summary would be unfair, but there were definitely parts of the video that struck me as interesting. Early on, he mentions that a traditional neighborhood community is vanishing, and the only things holding it together are main roads, superstores, and televisions. He goes on to explain that with our new cell phones, we are experiencing a time where each of us is feeling a sort of collective identity, but still want to be a part of something. Something called cultural inversion, where we are valuing community while expressing individualism. A time where we crave independence but still want to fill voids with relationships. Through the rest of this video, we're able to learn all about how people take advantage of their anonymity on the internet, especially when making comments on the work of others. This is not something that requires any deep search. Once any public figure posts anything for their viewers or followers to see, it is guaranteed to garner much more hatred than quality online discussions in the comments. Furthermore, much of the feedback is so grammatically flawed that it is hard to make any sense of what someone is trying to say. So these so-called online communities clearly cannot equate the same types of communities that we have had in our neighborhoods for centuries. Some may say that the idea of online communities are superior to suburban communities. In a class reading by Bain, we learned that telephones allow us to be in one place, but have our mind and a conversation hundreds of miles away with another person. This did not make for much of a community, though it laid the foundation for what would be internet communities. While we're on our new and improved telephones, smartphones, we're able to communicate with just about any other person on the planet. In communication practice and theory, we have been able to stay in touch mainly through a website which outlines our readings, emails that notify us of any changes or updates to the class schedule, and Twitter, which allows us to contact our professor at almost any reasonable hour. Going deeper, almost all of our homework and papers have been done through online submissions. Sometimes we've been asked to log into a Google Doc in order to go to class rather than being in the actual classroom. This type of class mentality has its pros and cons. From the beginning of the semester, I was thrilled by my ability to use my blog, which I'll discuss more later, as a way to earn class credit as well as Twitter. During class, we would usually try to have group discussions about a recent video or a reading in order to come up with a complete thought that we could present to our class. I found this to be quite difficult considering I was relatively uncomfortable in the new classroom setting, given that I was completely unfamiliar with all my classmates. More so, it can be difficult for some people to always speak what is on their mind in person. Building on that, it seems rather difficult for my classmates to raise their hand and speak their opinion when they know that they have the floor and the rest of the class is making judgments on what they have to say. I think it would be fair to say that sometimes our class participation is underwhelming. However, there was one day where we did have our class online. Initially, I found this strange, but once a few questions were asked, it was incredible to see the overwhelming response from each and every person in the Google Doc. Afterwards, it seemed that most of our class could agree that it was a fun way to hold class. This type of response from the class was something that we had not yet experienced in the physical classroom. So clearly there is a part of ourselves that we're only able to tap into when behind a keyboard, leaving ourselves less vulnerable and giving ourselves more time to put our thought down and read it before submitting it to everyone. The side of the online connection is not all great though. During my time in the class, I've been able to get to know a few people, and I've been able to participate in activities that are not capable of being held online. First, meeting group people is sort of like introducing yourself to an online community. You are going to try and come off as the person you would like to be and may not necessarily show your true colors until later on. In 2010, Kirby Ferguson released Everything is a Remix, which detailed the progression of art and science through an intricate way of copying. Ferguson explained how every form of creativity is derived from a previous work. Whether it be art, science, or business, great ideas do not spawn out of nowhere. This video crossed over well with our class assignment to find 10 conventions in each of our areas of blogging. In order to be able to put together worthwhile blogging posts about the NFL, I would have to remix some of the writing that is available on popular sports websites such as ESPN or Bleacher Report. Clearly, I would have to put my own twist on things as well as use all the conventions of sports blogging to my benefit. When Michael West released The Machine is Using Us, he was referring to the nature of online community and how it supports itself. This class has been an example of how we are the machine and how it is using us. Each week, each student in our class would make the system stronger by making blog posts and using Twitter among many other apps in an effort to stay in the loop. We have taken a lot of information over the past few months, but it is nowhere near the type of information that the machine has gained from our learning experience. Each week during my blogging experience, I would have to be creative and come up with a hot-button NFL topic to write about. Initially, my blog was simple. I would usually cover some of the most competitive games of the previous or upcoming week. Other times, I would try to focus on a single player who had been performing well lately. After a few weeks, it became apparent that merely focusing on the premier teams in the NFL would not cut it. I had to dig deeper, analyze the teams in the middle of the pack, and explain why they were there. This was a challenge that I would willingly assign myself. My first few posts were challenging in the sense that I was getting used to blogging, but when I asked more out of myself, the rewards became evident. In order to form a well-educated opinion on all the teams, it was necessary for me to consider all types of statistics and trends on a week-to-week basis. Going further, I found myself studying each team week to week in order to make sure I could write with firm credibility. A large portion of this class has been discovering what digital literacy is and what it means to be digital literate. Through this process, I have learned about myself as well as my peers. In discovering what digital literacy is, one may begin to question the importance of digital literacy or harm done through illiteracy in their daily life. Cindy Self explains the differences between literate and illiterate segments of society. She tells us that people who are literate members of society have high levels of technological literacy skills and that our country's wealth is greatly affected by the people with these skills, especially when considering their wealth and employment. On the other hand, people who are considered to be amongst those illiterate segments of society spend their days doing some of the least desirable jobs there are to offer. The relevance of digital literacy is increasing each day. Corporations are now hiring young postgraduates to work in a setting based around social media. Online writing, especially in sports, has become rather casual as of recent. This is an effort being made by all of America's large corporations in order to be effective in their methods of not only reaching out to young people, but each of Twitter's 974 million accounts. Staying involved online each week has allowed me to expand my digital literacy beyond what I knew. It's been fun to remain in the loop with an area of blogging that highlights my interests, making it an exciting point in my week each time I post, rather than a drag. Though I'll miss my blog, it has laid a great foundation for my maturation as a digitally literate person. At the start of the semester, I had never blogged or tweeted, and I can now comfortably say that I feel like a seasoned veteran in those fields.